going on, y'all? Y'all are one here with another video, and today I want to talk a little bit more about this PlayStation 5 Pro. It's got a lot of people hyped up. I know I'm hyped up for it. I got mine pre-ordered. You understand? That's just my own personal, desire to have the latest technology. I always do that anyways, and I've been planning for it, and I've set aside money specifically for the PS5 Pro. So I knew about that. The PS5 Pro, I got mine pre-ordered, and it is worth the cost. I don't know why people keep saying that it isn't, because it has a GPU with technology that's not even released to the market for PCs yet. And then you have, of course, the built-in 4K 60 HDR, game capture capability. You've got 2 terabytes of super fast SSD speeds. I'm curious to see when they finally tear it down. I'm sure that someone's going to tear it down. I want to see what the cooling system looks like in this one, because the cooling system in the launch model was a really large bronze unit. It was a good cooling system that was in it, and they used the thermal paste and stuff. I wonder if they've done anything with that in the PS5 Pro. I'd be curious to see that, because maybe that will help justify some of these internal costs, right, of why they launched it at that price point. I feel like the GPU alone, with its tech, with ray tracing and with PSSR and with just the more compute units, I feel like that alone justifies the price. But there could be something else going on under the hood that we don't know yet, that they haven't fully detailed for the public to know about. So that'll be interesting to see once it launches. But we know that, of course, the games, it's all about the games, really, right? That's why we even buy these consoles. Some of the games that I want to see, of course, Cyberpunk 2077. I would like to see ray trace reflections on it. And I would definitely like to see it reach 60 frames per second, or at least aim to shoot towards 60 frames per second. Because I feel like if it's internally 720 to 1080p, and then ray trace reflections are on, I think that's something that's doable with AI upscaling. And so Cyberpunk is a game that I am definitely looking forward to seeing them update. My back catalog of games, God of War, Ragnarok. I spoke about this in my previous video. Those are games that I haven't finished, but I would like to play them at the absolute best possible resolution and frame rate that is available. And another example of a game that I think could benefit from the PlayStation 5 Pro would be the Fallout 4 PS5 version that was launched about a couple months ago. I bought that, started it, set my character up, haven't had time to play it, but I'll squeeze in some time here to get chipping away at some of these games with the PS5 Pro. That's for damn sure. I have games to play. I don't know why people say, "Oh, there's no games to play." Well, maybe because if you beat them all right when they came out, yeah. But a lot of people like me working these extra hours for Elon Musk here. I mean, we getting it in, making this Cybertruck. This console generation has been quite strange because it has been mostly focused on multi-platform games. I feel like multi-platform games is the direction that a lot of companies want to go. Even first-party studios are starting to branch out into multiple consoles, and that's partially because of what Xbox has brought into the ecosystem. Whether it's good or bad is give or take, because it takes away from the competition and the exclusivity that comes from actual console exclusives. Which adds to the debate about the whole console war, but Microsoft has diluted it by just straight up releasing stuff to everything, and then making games primarily for PC. Basically, it's like as if Xbox has just become the largest third-party studio with their acquisitions. They've got Bethesda, they went and got Activision Blizzard, which could change the landscape of the entire industry with that acquisition. So that's something that can't be ignored. And you got to give credit to Xbox for finally pulling out that wallet and flexing it a little bit. That's something that they should have done a long time ago, honestly. But Sony has a really hardcore fan base, so there's always going to be that loyalty there with their fan base. It's not so much about them having to prove to anybody that their product should be purchased. It's more so just about them continuing the consistency and quality of the products that have kept people with them for so long. And that's why even the PS3 generation, they bounced back and ended up with more sales than the Xbox 360. That's why the PlayStation 4 generation, they had started off on the right foot with the consumers, you know what I'm saying, getting on their good side and winning that generation just by default because they weren't on the Big Brother type shit. They just went in and brought out the exclusive. There is one gripe though that I do have with Sony, and this is something that can be addressed, something that needs to be addressed, especially right now with the climate of the industry as it is. Sony needs to focus on some first-person shooters. A big title. SOCOM, Killzone, Resistance. Those are the type of games that should be in the repertoire. It shouldn't always be over-the-shoulder, third-person, story-driven games. That's been their go-to. And you see the success in games like The Last of Us, in Horizon, in God of War. And so we have that. But Sony, at its most hardcore, for a person like me, this is my opinion, this is like it's facts or nothing, but I feel like Sony is at its best when it has a bona fide FPS that is specific to the console. Now, I'm saying that while at the same time hoping that Xbox creates a StarCraft shooter that is a multi-platform game. So it's kind of selfish to say that. And that's something that I think that Xbox has done this generation, is to just open up the idea of talking about, hey, you know what, how about we all just be able to play together? Which I can understand that, except we're not exactly at the specs of PC. At the high-end PCs that go up to 240 hertz, and that's where I have issues with cross-playing against PC gamers on games like Call of Duty. I don't like doing that. I still play against them, but I already know that my KD ratio is going to be a little bit plateaued because of that. You know what I'm saying? I understand that. Matter of fact, I like being on the other side of that and having the advantage over it. So I really can't even talk shit, but I understand that that's what it is. You know, that's where we're at right now, where crossplay is becoming the norm. You know, it's even gone in NBA 2K series, got crossplay now. Crossplay in Predator Hunting Grounds. Crossplay is going to be, they added it to Destiny, they added it to Starship Troopers. You know, there's so many examples. Call of Duty being the most important one, obviously, that being with the acquisition that they have with Microsoft. There is a game that I've always wanted to see happen. And it's better that it hasn't happened yet, because now that the technology is where this game can be executed to such a high degree, now's the time to do it. And it is in Microsoft's hands to do it, that they need to make it happen. And more specifically, Blizzard Entertainment. They have the IP of what could be a genre-defining game that could take over the industry for the next 5 to 10 years. We know Grand Theft Auto is the juggernaut. It is the juggernaut of the gaming industry. But Blizzard has something special in the StarCraft IP, because there's so many angles you could go with it. It could be a military shooter, it could be a Battlefield type game, you have a PlanetSide 2 type game with different factions, different play styles. You could have a Destiny type of RPG game that mixes World of Warcraft elements to bring that StarCraft universe to the forefront. There's a lot of potential there. It's going to take a really large development team to do that, but Microsoft has the ability to do that. They could really bring that gaming industry back to its heyday with something like that, or bring the competition back and make things interesting again. And I'm rooting for them to do something with that StarCraft IP, because hell, I know if Sony does, they would definitely jump on that. And I think it should be an FPS, but I'm not naive. I know that I think a third person would probably be more suited to a lot of the different units in the game, or at least have the option to switch between, kind of like Star Wars Battlefront, let's just switch between first person and third person. I think that may be a good idea, but a StarCraft FPS or third person shooter, quit playing. Make it like real atmospheric, like Killzone or Gears of War, with the scale of like a Battlefield game. take it out of the RTS genre and bring it into the modern age with something like that. If you got yourself a killer IP right there, I'm just putting a free game out there. Listen, I like Sony. I'm a Sony fanboy all the way, but I'll get a PC for that. Because I know damn well Xbox ain't gonna make that a console exclusive. We know how they roll. They're trying to get the money. So that's what it is, and then execute that game, and you got yourself back in the mix. That's all I'm saying. The Xbox Series X, it's taking the L, man. It's only done half the sales of the PlayStation 5. So a game like StarCraft would probably be something they want to focus on for the next generation, so that they have the hardware to support crazy intensive graphics that a game like that could potentially need. Okay, and so that would be something that if they were to launch a new gen console within the next 2 or 3 years, they want to have the killer IP for it, and it should be something like a StarCraft shooter. Because then maybe even if they do launch it as a multi-platform game or have it as a timed exclusive, that would make a lot of sense. But then if they had the ability to launch it on, I don't even know if that's something they would want to try to launch on old gen consoles, but make a true next gen game where right when the game launches with the console launch, that it's only possible on a new gen console. That's something that brings the discussion up and the hype up way more, because I think that what these previous generation consoles have made the mistake of is clinging to the old generation, which again, I understand by a business perspective, that's exactly what you would want, but that's not what the real gamers want to see. They want to see technology progress so much that the old consoles cannot handle it. And we know that's true because all the hype surrounding Grand Theft Auto 6 is what is bringing the hype for the PS5 Pro right now. Because they're talking about, it may only be able to do 30 FPS. Well, maybe. I don't know, maybe. Or at least with, its actual graphical settings that they wanted, that they're shooting for, that would make sense. But I don't think that what you would want to do is put yourself in a position where you're launching a console early and then you get one up by a console that gets launched 1 or 2 years shortly after that. Right? You'll have the upper hand for a short amount of time, but you don't want it to be too early to where the other developer has time to develop even newer iteration of their next gen product. And then what happens is Xbox will be stuck in this cycle of having the weaker console for an extended period of time rather than having a head start and then having advantage for a short amount of time. What will happen is the graphics and the processing and the CPU and GPU of the next gen Xbox will be weaker than the PS6, which would be a mistake. A lot of people are just used to seeing the end result without understanding everything that goes into creating the technology that is a part of the progression of computational systems, mechanical, electrical engineering, or specifically MEMS and NIMS, which means nano electrical mechanical systems or micro electrical mechanical system. And that's the type of circuitry that's needed to create CPUs and GPUs. And the issue that happens as you start to continue to minimize the size of the nodes of the transistors and things like that, the yields become more difficult to make consistently because you'll have more blemishes on the substrates and on the silicons and things like that. And so when you're looking at a 3 nanometer node, part of the reason why, and this is efficient, I like the way NVIDIA does this. Well, I believe most companies do it like this, where you have your absolute best yields as your highest end product, and then the ones that have more defects are the ones that end up being the lower end because they can still use them. It's just that in the attempt of them trying to make a substrate or a microchip or any kind of nano electrical mechanical system, right, for the processing units, that the yields are not always consistent. And so sometimes you'll have those defects, and that means, okay, only this amount of transistors works, right? Or only this amount works for this same sized area. It'll be the same amount of material, but the yield will be different depending on how successful the process was for any particular substrate or wafer whatever you want to call it, right? And so that actually does two things. It means there's probably more scrap as you start to get towards the end of Moore's law, because the miniaturization can only go so far. You get to 2 nanometers, 1 nanometer, there's going to be more and more defects, because this is something that almost goes against nature at that point. You're talking about the size of atoms now, you know what I mean? Quantum physics and quantum mechanics follows different rules in that scale. You understand? You're playing with a different world down there in the nanometer scale. And that's why that technology gets so expensive, because okay, they can figure out how to do this consistently good at 5 nanometers, 7 nanometers, but as they start to get into these smaller ones, they're starting to have more issues making them consistently of high yields, and that's why production costs go up for the manufacturers themselves, and that's why cost of the end product is higher. They said, disk drive, go ahead and pay that separate. Let me focus on cutting down the cost of having to manufacture these GPUs, and we'll go give you 2 terabytes of SSD storage. That's a good move on their part. Focus on the more important specs, and then let us do the modular approach and add what we need to it. Add more storage later with the external SSD attachment, that little bay you can put it in, right? And then have the disk drive, and you can add. That's going to save them some room off the top, so that you can make that as an add-on later on. I think that's a smart approach, and I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do in the next gen. They're going to focus on having more modular approaches. It would be an incredible feat, which I don't expect to happen, if later on, at some point, consoles get to the point where you could switch out the CPUs and GPUs, because it'd be, oh, well, why don't you just get a PC at that point? But if they make it a very novel approach, it makes it easier to do, and then they have a roadmap of how it's going to be designed, to where you could swap it out in a very simplistic way without having to go and tear everything down. That would be an awesome way to have incremental upgrades even within consoles, which would raise a lot of questions, but then would give people the variety of being able to buy what they want at whatever price is available at the time. And that's kind of what you have now, but in a full set. PS5 base model, PS5 Pro new model. And that's kind of what we're looking at even right now with that. So the only difference is now you're just going to have to buy the whole thing rather than incrementally like a PC. But that modular approach is something that they've been slowly introducing as an idea within these past 2, maybe 3 console generations, right? Switching out the hard drive on a PS3, you understand? Upgrading to a PS4 Pro, using the SSD slot to add more storage. That's something that I think consoles are going to continue to reach towards, obviously.